Morning guys. So today we are going to study one topic of the last module, that is module 6 actually. Only we are left over with the two topics, that is basics of the non-linear systems, its types as well as the properties, and then I will be formally introducing the random signals and the process actually. So these two things we won't be expecting any problems actually. The last two topics we won't be expecting any problems for the university exams, but short questions as well as they may ask some theories from this one actually. And keep it in mind, we always discuss about LTA system while we are talking about the analysis in actually analysis as well as the tools so that are to be used in the analysis in signals and systems as well as in the next year, that is a DSP. Okay, so unless or otherwise it has been stated specifically that we are discussing about non-LTA system, it is to be understood that we are talking about LTA system. What is LTA system? Linear time invariant system, right? So I hope you remember the formal definition of an LTA system, right? If you don't know the definition, then I just want you to pause the video here, go there and check out our previous videos and then come back. So a linear system are the ones which obey the principle of superposition. What is the principle of superposition? The principle of superposition says that it has to obey two things. One is a law of additivity. These things we have discussed already. Law of additivity as well as the homogeneity property, right? So these two things are very much essential to say. Our system has to obey these two principles. Then we can say that our system is obliging linearly, right? In case if it does not oblige these two, at least one of these two properties, then I can conclude that particular system is a non-linear system. Simple, right? Non-linear, actually practically, actually on the day-to-day basis, practically most often we encounter systems which are going to be non-linear only, right? But however, we have extreme difficulty in analyzing this non-linear systems. The primary reason of the difficulty in analysis is due to its non-linear or else this dynamic behavior. So what does it mean? Dynamic behavior means it's going to vary its output that does not depend upon the input. That means what? It is going to randomly vary here and there. So that makes the analysis simply impossible, or else bit complicated, or else bit mathematically complicated. So that we call those systems are extremely difficult to analyze. So, however, the literature suggests that there are few advantages in the non-linear systems as well, right? What are the advantages? One of the biggest advantages is it is less costly, and in some cases it can perform extremely quicker than when compared to the linear systems. These things you must have encountered in control systems and here also I think somewhere, here I have mentioned it invariably this control systems actually, but the same theory applies to any non-linear systems as well. And as expected, the non-linear systems actually they are of miniature in size. They can be made in miniature size, or else we can make it as a small, in a small size actually. And as I said earlier, most of all the physical systems, they tend to have some sort of non-linearity. And as I pointed out earlier, the non-linear, the presence of the non-linearity in some system, actually they call them as advantages also in some situations, because of producing a non-linear system is a pretty easier as well as pretty safer and even economical than producing a linear system as well. However, whatever we say, this point we should not forget actually. A non-linear system cannot be analyzed by using a traditional Nyquist stability criterion from which we evolved pole zero method. നിങ്ങൾ മറ്റേ കൺട്രോൾ സിസ്റ്റത്തിൽ ഉറപ്പായിട്ട് പോൾ സീറോ മെത്തേഡ് വെച്ചിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ അനലൈസ് ചെയ്യും ഉറപ്പായിട്ട്. അറ്റ്ലീസ്റ്റ് നിങ്ങൾ ചെയ്തില്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ സിഗ്നൽ സിസ്റ്റത്തിൽ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ലാപ്ലാസ് ട്രാൻസ്ഫോമും പിന്നെ ഇസ ട്രാൻസ്ഫോം ഒക്കെ പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മളത് പോൾ സീറോ മെത്തേഡ് വെച്ചിട്ടാണ് വി അനലൈസ്ഡ് ആക്ച്വലി. We analyze any systems actually, but while we are forced to do an analysis in the nonlinear systems, these traditional methods we cannot use it. There are two types of nonlinearities that are possible. One is the nonlinearity that is being present in the particular system can be either termed as static or dynamic. In order to understand mathematically the presence of the dynamic system would have been written in a mathematical fashion by using the nonlinear differential equation, partial differential equations and all, right? So these systems tend to vary its characteristics over the period of time significantly. That's why we call it as a dynamic. Otherwise, those nonlinear systems can also be called as static system. Okay. So we will be discussing about some examples to discuss about the types as well as the properties of the nonlinearity system. So I mean nonlinearities that are present in the system, right? So that example we are going to actually look into the form of control system. Okay, so in short what I am trying to say is we are going to discuss the nonlinearities that are present in a typical control system. The first type is the saturation nonlinearity, second one is the friction nonlinearity, third one is dead zone, fourth one is relay, backlash. About 5 types of nonlinearity undu. 5 types of nonlinearity undu. So these things I have a feeling that you must have studied in a control system. If not, we are going to study here also, right? So let us see the formal definitions of this saturation nonlinearity, friction nonlinearity, dead zone nonlinearity, relay as well as backlash nonlinearity one by one. Fine. Yeah, this saturation nonlinearity is a common type that can be seen in plenty in most of the nonlinear systems actually. For example, you must have studied the magnetizing curve of the DC motor. Magnetizing curve, characteristics of the DC motor padikkumbol ningal magnetization curve okka padichirukkum. That particular curve, magnetizing curve, is a typical example of a saturation non-linearity. Closely study this curve. This is varying linearly up to this particular point, and once after actually hitting a threshold, it is going through a saturation period. So this saturation period introduces a kind of non-linearity in the system, and hence we call those kind of systems which have this particular problem as saturation non-linearity type. Okay, so you can often see this in amplifiers as well. Sound amplifier, അത് കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? സൗണ്ട് ആംപ്ലിഫയർ വെറുതെ ഇങ്ങനെ നോർമലായിട്ട് വർക്ക് ചെയ്യും, പെട്ടെന്ന് ഒരു ത്രഷോൾഡ് ആ ഗെയിന് ഒരു ത്രഷോൾഡിൻ്റെ മുകളിൽ പോകുമ്പോൾ അത് ഒരു സൗണ്ട് ഇടല്ലോ, ഒരു സൗണ്ട്, ഒരു ബീപ്പിംഗ് സൗണ്ട് വരും. ആൻഡ് വേഗം ദറ്റ് actually a guy will be actually rushing towards this, and they will be fixing the gain, and so that they will be pulling back the system to its linear operating region, that is this one, right? About mostly ella systemly non-linearity undu, but we can adjust the gains or do the do the pole zero correction adjustment to bring back the system from the non-linear area to linear area. This is what we understand from this, right? And this type of non-linearity we can see in the machines wherever we experience some friction actually. So what is a friction? Anything which opposes the smooth motion or the relative motion of the particular body is called friction, right? So in this particular friction, this particular characteristics will also actually they will also introduce some kind of non-linearity that we call it as friction non-linearity. And a typical example will be your electric motor again. Okay, so in electric motor we find a friction called Coulomb friction, and this Coulomb friction is a drag that occurs due to the rubbing contact between the brushes as well as the commutators. Brushes and commutators, right? Look, again, this friction can be classified into three types actually. Friction, it can be classified into three types, right? One is static friction, second one the dynamic friction, third one we call it as limiting friction, right? So static friction is a kind of friction that occurs when the body is at rest. So ഇതിന്റെ opposite ഉറപ്പായിട്ട് dynamic ആയിട്ട് തന്നെ ഉണ്ടാവും, right? So when there is a relative motion, excuse me spelling, relative motion between the working surface and the body, this introduces the second type of friction, and we call it as a friction, dynamic friction, and this dynamic friction also introduces some sort of non-linearity in our system, so that we call it as dynamic friction non-linearity. And third one is the limiting friction. It is defined as the maximum value of the limiting friction, maximum value of limiting friction that acts on the body, when it is at rest. Okay, and this is a extreme popular non-linearity that will be found in most of the electrical machines actually. We call it as a dead zone non-linearity. Here you can observe what is a dead zone actually. Even the presence of the input, there is no output, right? That we call it as a dead zone. And this kind of dead zone non-linearity we can observe from many motors, like servo motors or even actuators, etc. There are too many types of motors that will fall into this particular category. You know, actually this non-linearities, they refer to a condition in which the output, this particular part, the output will be still zero even in the presence of the input, right? So this kind of non-linearities also exists. In control systems we use electromechanical relays very often, right, in order to achieve in order to perform certain function actually. So these electromechanical relays, when used in your device, that will provide me, I mean, that will produce some kind of hysteresis loss. Hysteresis loss you must have studied already in your electrical machines and all. So this type of losses are, it often actually tends to be produced when you are using relays in your system. So this is the ideal characteristics of a relay, and this one with a dead zone actually, we have I mean, because of the relay, I mean because of the presence of the dead zone, some kind of non-linearity can arise, and here because of the magnetization or also hysteresis, some sort of non-linearity can also be included. This, you know, by seeing this diagram you will be tempted to say this as a hysteresis non-linearity, but this is not a hysteresis non-linearity. This we call it as backlash non-linearity, and this can be often found out in some mechanical transmission systems, where we use gear boxes or gear trains or any mechanical linkages, right? So this backlash, this backlash can be found out between the part called the teeth of the drive gear and those of the driven gear actually. A gear engagement എന്ന് പറയാലോ, gear lock, അതിൻ്റെ ഇടയ്ക്ക് വരുന്ന ഒരു സംഭവമാണത്. This can be measured there actually. So figure A, where is it? Yeah, figure A, this one. Figure A we show a gearbox being mechanically geared in a mechanical, I mean in a transmission system, and the presence of the backlash have been pictorially depicted here by this one, by the, I mean they have represented it as the presence of the resistance, right? So while if you observe this carefully, this diagram, it shows the teeth A layer, teeth A of the driven gear located midway between the B1 as well as B2, right? So ഇതിന്റെ ഇടയ്ക്ക് വെച്ച് ഇങ്ങനെ ആയിപ്പോയി, ലൈക്ക് ഇതിന്റെ ഇടയ്ക്ക് ആയിപ്പോയി ഇതിന്റെ ടീത്ത് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So I mean actually this kind of positioning, improper positioning will lead to the backlashing. Figure C gives the relationship between the input as well as the output motions, this one. So this, I mean this kind of gearing arrangement, if it is not properly arranged, then it will lead to a kind of nonlinearity in the system, and we call it as backlash nonlinearity. Okay, so with this this particular session is over. So what we have done is, like, we discussed very generally, actually very generally, very roughly about the the nonlinear systems actually, and then we studied the types of the nonlinearities that exist in an example, through an example. So we called it as that example was control system, and we, through an example, we understood easily. We identified the types, actually 4 or 5 types, 5 types we have studied, 5 types of nonlinearity we have studied, right? The next class we are going to introduce again formally, roughly only I am going to introduce, because those are one book. I mean our topic ഒക്കെ വെച്ചാൽ ലൈക്ക് എല്ലാം ഒവ്വൊരു ബുക്കുകളാണ്, നമുക്കത് ആശയമില്ല. PG-യിൽ പഠിക്കും. If you are interested in PG, in case if you are preferring some electronics and communication based PG courses, very sure you will be studying random analysis and nonlinear control systems and nonlinear systems and all, right? So in the next class I will be formally introducing the random analysis. Thank you.